Well, one of the very first things I did when I became the pastor here 8.5 years ago was I established a kudos section in the weekly church epistle newsletter and in the Sunday bulletin. The word kudos comes from an ancient Greek word which means praise. And I have to tell you, it brings me so much joy each week to bestow praise and kudos on all of you who do so much in service of our church and community. But sometimes I will catch someone in the act of doing something good for our church, and they'll say to me, "Pastor Sal, do not give me kudos for this. I don't want my name in the bulletin." And I understand that. I know you're not doing it because you want credit for it. But I also want you to know that what I'm doing with kudos is I'm actually giving you a blessing. That's what a kudo is. I'm offering to God a prayer of thanksgiving for you. The 13th century Christian mystic who was known as Meister Eckhart, he said, if the only prayer you ever said in your life was thank you, that would be enough. That's the greatest prayer. Thank you. Now, Jesus, of course, understood this. If you read the Gospels, you see Jesus is consistently practicing gratitude. So, for example, you may remember the story of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. Remember, the apostle said it's not enough food to feed all of these people. They were kind of cursing the fact that that's all they had. They were focusing on the lack. But what did Jesus do? He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and it says he gave thanks for it. He gave thanks for what he had. And what happened because of that? Abundance. Gratitude leads to abundance. And we see the same thing at the Last Supper. Jesus, before he passed the bread around the table, and then before he passed the wine around the table, it says he gave thanks to God for it. He expressed his gratitude, it blessed the apostles, and it's continued to feed us 2,000 years later. Now, we hear about gratitude once again in today's gospel reading for the 18th Sunday after Pentecost. 10 people were healed, but only one of them came back to say thank you. And that person was a Samaritan. If you remember when Reverend Lillian Daniel was here last month, she spoke to us about the Good Samaritan and who Samaritans were. They were considered unclean foreigners. That's the one that came back to say thank you. And I think it's so true today. 90% of people do not count their blessings. They do not focus on gratitude. But that 1 in 10 person really seems to know and understand this spiritual law, this spiritual principle of gratitude. Now, I know when I speak about spiritual laws and principles, some people roll their eyes and they think I'm talking about New Age mumbo-jumbo. But spiritual laws and principles are just as real as all of the other laws and principles that govern the workings of the universe. You don't question the law of gravity, do you? So why are you questioning this law of gratitude? What this spiritual law is it was well explained in our words of integration and guidance this morning. When you concentrate on what you have, you get more. And when you concentrate on what you don't have, there'll never be enough. This is biblical. Jesus said this in Matthew 13, verse 12. He said, to a man who has, there will always be more, and he will have an abundance. But to those who do not have, even that will be taken away. And what Jesus meant by that was those who appreciate what they have will have more. They'll have an abundant life. Those who focus on what they don't have will not. That's the spiritual practice, the spiritual law of gratitude. So it all has to do with what we focus on. It has to do with our thoughts. Now, the National Science Foundation says that we all have 65,000 thoughts a day. Isn't that amazing? But guess what? They also say that 90% of those thoughts are negative ones. And 80% of those are repetitive ones. They're ones we repeat to ourselves. So most of our thoughts are negative, and most of those are repeats, ones we keep telling ourselves. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could control our thoughts? Well, guess what? We can. You know, that's a big aha for most people. Most people don't realize that they can control their thoughts. Most people are servants of their thoughts and their feelings and their emotions. They're not in control of them. You know, I know because I used to be one of those people until I woke up. And one of the things that helped me wake up was my spiritual practices of affirmative prayer and mindfulness and meditation. It wasn't easy. It's work. It's a discipline. I've told you before that the word discipline comes from the same word as the word disciple. If you want to be a disciple, it takes discipline. It takes work. But I guarantee you, I've been freed. And one of the things that freed me was what we heard about in our words of integration and guidance. I've shared this with you before. 15 years ago, I started a gratitude journal. It's something I practice each and every day to this day. And it has rewired my brain. What you do, it's a very simple practice. You just take a blank journal, you put it on your nightstand, and before you go to bed each night, you put that day's date and you write thank you. And then you write down 5 things that happened that day that you're thankful for. It's so simple, but you won't believe the results that will happen in your life. Because most people, when they go to bed, they're focused on negativity. They're thinking or they're worried about what they have to do tomorrow, or they're holding on to something from the day that they can't let go of. But when you focus on gratitude before your head hits the pillow, then you're focused on the blessings. And as we heard from Jesus, you get more things to be grateful for. In other words, what you appreciate appreciates. You get more of it. That's how it works. Now, I know that most of you know this because you've experienced it in your life. When you were in the working world, some of you are still in the working world, but when your boss affirms you, you feel good. It makes you want to go back to work. But when your boss starts to criticize you for little things, you don't want to be there. And the same thing is true in relationships. When you first fall in love with someone, you're so grateful for every little thing that they do. You leave little notes for them. But then you start to criticize those little things, the socks on the floor, the toilet seat up, okay? And churches are not immune from this. When you first find a church that you love, you're so thankful for it. Everything's perfect. But then you start to find fault with little things. One of our UCC pastors shared with me that she received a criticism that she wore flats, while she preached. And the criticism was, you need to wear heels that's much more professional. Now, you know women pastors get a lot more criticism than male pastors do. Okay? Now, when I heard that, I thought, how crazy that someone would say that to a pastor instead of focusing on her message and on all the good work that she does. But you know, we're living in an age of social media where people feel like it's okay to express every opinion. And then when they start to get likes on it, they feel affirmed by their opinion. Okay? And that's a very dangerous thing. I love this practice that our Quaker friends have. They say, before you say anything to anyone, Or I'll say before you post anything online, make sure it passes through 3 gates. Ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Has to pass through all 3 gates before you say it or post it. So let's look at that example of that pastor. Is it true? Is it true that heels are more professional than flats? Well, let's say you could even argue that it was. Was it necessary to tell the pastor that? I mean, did that impinge on her job performance in any way? And even if you could argue that, was it kind? I mean, how do you think the pastor felt after having heard that? Okay. So that's what I kind of want to make our homework for the week. You know, I'm always giving you homework. But the homework for the week is to focus on gratitude. Either start a gratitude journal if you've never done one before, or before you say something or post something, ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And this is the most important one. Say those things to yourself, to the thoughts that go on in your head. The thoughts that say, I'm not good enough, I'm not good looking enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not successful enough. Everyone else has, I don't. Those thoughts, when you hear them, say, is this true? Is this necessary? Is it kind? Because sometimes we say things to ourselves that we would never say to anybody else. We're so unkind to ourselves. In Romans 12, in Scripture, it says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. When you start changing your thinking, you will change your life. This is something I know for sure. So let us go forth this morning with an attitude of gratitude, for it will help us to see more clearly, to love more dearly, and to follow in the way of Jesus more nearly. Namaste. Hello, everybody. This is Sal Sapienza, and I'm so excited to share with all of you that I've written a brand new book. The book is called Childish Thinking: How the Church Keeps Us Stuck in Sunday School. Now, the title Childish Thinking comes from Christian scripture, where we hear that if we wish to grow in spiritual understanding, then we must let go of childish ways of thinking. And yet so many Christians today, even after years of Bible study and Sunday services, still have a very elementary understanding of their faith. They still understand God as some old man with a long gray beard. They think heaven is a place up in the clouds with pearly gates, that the devil is some red guy with horns and a pitchfork, and that hell is a fiery place below the earth. Those are things that we tell children. None of those descriptions appear anywhere in the Bible. And so in Childish Thinking, I try to dispel many of those misnomers, and I explore topics such as God, Jesus, heaven, hell, sin, prayer, and resurrection from the higher perspectives of ancient Christian mystics and contemporary progressive theologians. After each chapter, there are prayers for quiet contemplation and questions for personal reflection and journal writing. Come learn how you can let go of old ways of thinking and begin to see things with new eyes. Come and learn how you can finally graduate from Sunday school. The book is available now on Amazon, and you can read the entire introduction at childishthinking.faith.